Post Void. Now this is an interesting game. It's a perfect example of something that I've been very into lately, punk rock game design. Now, I don't mean just the look of this game. This thing looks like a million different stickers I've seen on the bottom of skateboards. It looks like the Malibu Kin album art. It's got the same energy as a Mad magazine cover. But when I say punk rock game design, I'm talking about breaking the rules. We've got around 30 years of first-person game design history to learn from. Everything from Wolfenstein 3D to Half-Life to Call of Duty to Dishonored has something to teach us about how FPS games should be made. Clear visual design that puts broadcasting information to the player above anything else, intuitive level design that subconsciously guides the player through a space with a myriad of psychological tools to draw on, highs and lows in the pacing which give the player particularly memorable moments where they really had to bring their A-game to survive, clear but minimalistic HUDs that the player can read subconsciously while focusing on something else, all while not taking up too much of the screen. I could go on and on. The point is, modern FPS games have gotten very sophisticated. I've been loving the Quake remaster as much as anyone else, but there's something to be said for these modern games where it feels like every little aspect probably took weeks of planning to fine-tune. It's a heritage that's been passed down and refined from game to game for 30-some years. Post Void doesn't care about any of that, though. It breaks the rules. It's difficult to tell what's going on at any moment, especially in the later levels. It's not clear at all what the optimal playstyle is for your first hour or two. You have to genuinely stop focusing on combat for a second to glean anything even remotely precise from this health meter in your hand. Other than north, there's basically no way of interpreting which way you should be going. You'll just have to be good at maintaining direction in a game space. The only break that you get from being at 100% tension is when you die, and even then it's more complicated than that. Point is, if you showed this game to Mr. Nolan from Dead Poets Society, he'd tell you that it was worthless and amateurish. But I've said before that the number one thing I'm looking for in media is to feel things that I haven't felt before, and can't feel anywhere else. And Post Void takes me there in a very serious way. I've had very minor panic attacks while playing this game. I've gone totally silent on my friends in VC for like an hour straight, just dead focused on the action. I get all twitchy when I play it, I wipe my nose like a crackhead for the split seconds I get to take my hands off the keyboard. There's just no way to make a human connect with this game other than just letting the whole thing wash over you and letting yourself disappear into it. You kind of just have to forfeit your mind and body to the game's insanity if you want to do well and stay calm while you do it. Sure, you can get awful RNG from time to time, but almost all of my game overs are, at the end of the day, caused by me feeling something or thinking something that was external to the game, pulling myself out of the experience for that 16th of a second. So, what's the point of all of this? Artistically, I mean. You've got to have a reason to break the rules, right? Otherwise you're just being subversive for the sake of being subversive. Well, I've got a reading on this game that I really like, but first, let's do something that you don't really get a lot of chances to do while you're actually playing the game. Breathe, and take in what the hell is going on. There's going to be spoilers from here on out, so if you need a recommendation for the game, let this be it. Basically, you're just some businessman-looking guy running through a series of gaudily decorated home interiors with the garish wallpaper and the awful couches and everything. You're being attacked by other businessmen, maybe gangsters, telephones, light bulbs, and a couple other weird enemies that sort of fit into that same homey aesthetic. And your ultimate goal is to get through all of this chaos into a garden where you can pour the contents of your skull into the soil to create a flower. So that's what we, the players, see happen over the course of a successful run. Seems kind of vague. But luckily, once you beat the tutorial, we get a little poem of sorts that sheds some light on what all of this means. First, there was the void. Then there was a headache, and a flower of hope that would give birth to a sanctuary. With his head in his hand, he who bore the pain would try to reach the void again. The place where nothing moves, where darkness is lord and silence is its preacher, a place of peace. There his head can pour freely onto a new seed, which, with renewed purpose, will sprout life. But alas, ceaseless violence and unapologetic noise would again be wallpapered to the corridors of past serenity. A time known as post-void, a place known as post-void. Analyzing this poem, it sounds to me like we have some guy, our player character, living in blissful ignorance of the world around him, peacefully existing in a mental void. First there was a void. Then he got a headache, bringing him to a mental time and place known as post-void, what came after his void. Suddenly, all of these familiar things in his life turned into just more fuel for the headache, and all he wants is to survive it all for long enough to get back into his void, the place of peace where nothing moves. Put as literally as possible, a guy, let's say someone who got fed up with his office job, decided to quit so that he could go into the woods and stare at a flower and forget the world around him. I'm not going to get so literal that I say that it's definitely about a guy who worked in an office getting fed up with the monotony. He could be a gangster who suddenly realized how bad his organization was, or someone who's sick of telemarketers bothering him at home. He can be whoever you want him to be. I'm pretty sure everybody has felt like this character at one point or another. But anyways, that frustration and headache is what all of the chaos, and let's be real, headache fuel in this game symbolizes, and what all of this violence symbolizes. Think about what happens when you're fighting in this game. When you get shot, you lose some of the goo in your skull. You confronted one of these symbols of your life, and the headache got worse. And when you kill an enemy, you've regained some of the skull goo, and the headache is resisted for a moment. Eventually, after countless attempts, you managed to control the headache long enough to get to your flower. You were in the void, then the headache came, bringing you to the post-void, and now you're finally back in the void again. But it doesn't really end there, does it? This is an arcade-style roguelike. You're meant to be going for that high score and playing again and again. Getting to the ending your first time, that's just one step in your mastery of a game like this. Sooner or later, you're going to return to the post-void, and the headache will be back. Just beating this game once doesn't change anything. This is all still incredibly headache-inducing. It's still the post-void, and it still exists just to melt your brain. But now we know that there's a peaceful ending in sight if we can do well enough. I'm going to stick with the businessman version of this game's metaphor because that's the one I personally relate to. But this moment, when we've beaten the game and we come back for more, is when the metaphor transforms a little bit. It stops being about that guy giving up on modern life to live in the woods or whatever, and turns into a guy just trying to survive each day so that he can go back home or go back to sleep or whatever. Each attempt is just another day in the office, quote-unquote. Someday you make it through the day and sleep well. Most times you feel like you're going crazy by the time it's over. Starting a new run after successfully completing one is also when the objective of the game changes, and it changes in a way that reflects how the metaphor changed. Before, we were just trying to get to the end by any means necessary. Now we're trying to do it in style, so that we can get the best score. Up until I had my first successful run, I swore by the Uzi with the rubber bullets and exploding enemies strategy. I'd just mindlessly spray around every corner and most enemies would be dead by the time they became a threat. It's effective, but it's sloppy and it won't get you a good score. Your accuracy rating will be pure garbage. Now, I like to use the knife and get right in the enemy's face. It's quick, clean, and effective, but even more than with the other strategies, you really need to let the headache wash over you for it to work. You just have to become a machine, holding and releasing the left mouse button to the mechanical rhythm of the corridors you walk in. No time to think, no time to worry, no time to feel. After doing this for long enough, you might start getting to the point where you instantly click on the upgrade you want without thinking about it, or taking a second to check your phone or scratch your nose. You won't blink or visibly move at all when you die and your frustration is met with a seizure-inducing flash of colors. You'll just instantly click on the retry button and keep going as if nothing had happened. If you play this, or really any game long enough, you can train yourself to just be an unfeeling zombie, mindlessly reacting to stimuli like Brukanenko's dog. That is, if you ask me, the true ending to this game. This is a game that practically exists just to get a reaction out of you. Looking at it is kind of difficult. Playing it is intense and heart-pounding, your hands get all twitchy, your words turn into short little caveman grunts. It definitely can give you a headache. In my case, it tended to trigger my vertigo pretty badly if I played for too long. Much like the monotony of life, it's stressful and anxiety-inducing and kind of makes you feel like you're going crazy. That's what being in the post-void is all about. But if you play this game for long enough, eventually you just become that zombie. You don't care when you die, or when you get bad RNG and can't get the upgrades you were planning on. You don't get excited about getting to the end, or getting a new high score, or any of that. You're just a zombie, but a zombie that's at peace. If you get to this point, congratulations. You don't feel anything. You've turned the post-void back into the void. You've learned how to survive modern life. You've brought the void with you, and in doing so, destroyed the very concept of post-void. Before I close out this week's video and get back to work on the biggest project I've ever started, I'd like to go ahead and verbally thank the patrons, especially those who are donating $10 or more monthly, such as Ada Avery, Almost Dead Again, Anatoly Volnov, Andrew Melnick, Benny, Big Time Jim, Bobby Blitz, CJ Keene, Celadon, Chompy Uwu, Christopher Pinar, Colin Gajic, Cornelius Nelson, Darius Fazier, David Kaiser, Demise, Dennis Voschakemer, Dominic Johann, Duncan Bristow, Fralum, IJK, Jack Eisenberg, Kenneth Enfinger, Laffy, Mixer Rules, Neurofilter, Of Lucian, PJ, Raptor, Raxvan, Robert Boateng, Scotty from Marketing, CeeLo, Shane O, Vivian Cox, What's Rozzy, Keen Vo, Yemen Shi, and Zyrobly. I know it's been a long time since my last upload, and you were probably expecting more than, a 12-minute video, but that is because I just finished a 60-page script, which adds up to a little over a 2-hour-long video, by far the biggest thing I've ever written, on the entire Metal Gear Solid series, and I'm going to need a lot of time to edit that together, so there's probably going to be a couple smaller videos like this in the interim. Anyways, thanks for sticking with me, and have a great week.